So breaking free from alcohol can be a life changer, and I want to share with you today how I was able to do it. Greetings everyone, it's Jordan Parker. Welcome back to my channel. If you're watching this, I imagine you're considering stopping drinking, or at least just curious about what that could look like. Either way, I think it's important that you're here, and I hope to add some value from my personal journey. There's plenty of material out there on the damage and the harm that alcohol does on our body, relationships, our spirit, and so forth. And I also think it's important, though, to look at what are the benefits. Anytime you're going to quit a habit, there's some needs that are being met by that habit, and I think it's important to really know what you're in store for and start working on supplementing, getting those needs met. So for me, the benefits of drinking were many, actually. Alcohol was great at helping me with loneliness and shame, and really being used as a social lubrication. My standards were lower when I was drinking across the board. And there was something comforting about being able to just open a beer or have a glass of wine when I came home from a stressful day, or when I was already home and I just wanted to self-soothe and check out for the day. Alcohol connected me in many ways to social groups growing up, and very much helped me with feeling like I always had a backup in case my self-care wasn't that great. At least I could drink a little bit and feel better for that day, for that moment. I started drinking when I was 15, and I drank for almost 2 decades until I was 34. And it's been 6 years since I had a drink. And when I look back on it, I can see that me stopping drinking was a combination of grace and also a lot of hard work, in particular around changing my environment and my habits. And those are the things that we can control. Life has its own plans, and grace happens when it does, but that's out of our control. And so for the people out there that are able to quit on the spot or white knuckle it, hats off to them. That's a blessing in and of itself, and most people can't do that. The way I approach something like stopping drinking, especially if it's any form of crutch or any kind of dependency, is strengthening muscles around a wound or an injury. So really looking at what are all of the ways that I am at choice, aside from, let's say, alcohol, especially if it's an issue, and what can I do about it in my day-to-day. I think that's where power gets returned back to you. From my story, there were many bottoms, and I know in recovery programs, or just the saying, rock bottom, people use that phrase a lot. And in my experience, it's sometimes hard to know that you're at rock bottom until many years later, when you can look back and you have more data and more experience to draw from. I say that because I think it's important to have a sense of humility, that you never know when you're bottom or when that moment is that it's time to change. And also, you don't have to wait for it. I think at some point you can be sick and tired of being sick and tired. That said, my bottom was at 34, and I was having health issues. And I had what I now know to be an inflamed liver, and was in pain anytime I ate anything with fat. I would need to lie down for hours because I had radiating pain throughout my back and my lower body. And I went to 4 different doctors, and no one knew what was going on. Eventually, I got to the source of it, and through a combination of a lot of suffering at that time, grace, and importantly, my habits and my environment really lining up, I was able to take my last drink and start a new chapter in my life. So drawing from my own experience, I want to share with you some of the tools and resources that I had and used leading up to that period that in hindsight, I believe can help anyone that's looking to stop drinking. First and foremost, we got to start with your social circle. For me, this was most important, and I think for a lot of people it is. And it's also the hardest, and it's the one that takes the most time. So our social circle has a profound influence on our decisions and the structure of our day-to-day. And I think it's instrumental, if you have any kind of dependency on alcohol, that you really take a hard look at who you're spending time with and how you're spending that time. Changing your social circle starts with one thing at a time, one person, one friend. You don't always need to walk away from friendships or relationships, but sometimes that is the case. So a willingness to be able to do that is important. For me, I had to get clear on what are the things I really love to do, regardless of whether I'm drinking or not. That was things like dancing and social events, exercise, nature, conversations with friends, and so forth. So you could start with getting clear on what are the things you love to do, regardless of whether you have a sip of alcohol or not. And though it may not be for everyone, a great place to start to supplement your social circle is 12-step programs, Alcoholics Anonymous. That's where a bunch of people go and they're saying, you know what, I want to move on from alcohol. And their stories and experiences are incredibly powerful, wise, and humbling. You definitely don't have to make friends with everyone there, but at the very least have an openness to hearing the wisdom of somebody that's a few steps further than you in their relationship with alcohol and sobriety and thriving in their life. 12-step meetings can also provide structure, and that's the next point I want to talk about. A lot of people in particular often just have work as a structure and maybe family, work and family. But outside of that, there's not a lot of structure that helps hold them. So setting up hobbies and connections and a variety of things to do around self-care can be instrumental in providing the structure that you're going to need to start a new way of life. Because no longer drinking is a new way of life. So aside from your social circle, I think it's really important to look at what is your why. What's the thing that when it gets hard, you're going to remember and be like, you know what, it's worth it. Is it spending more time with family or friends? Is it your job? Is it your health? What are the whys that you can write down and get crystal clear that you're committed to seeing those things through? Beyond your why, there, of course, is just your health, your physical health. In my experience, when I go to the gym or do yoga or do anything where my body is needed and I'm committed to that practice, the more I do it, the more my whole orientation moves towards more healthy way of living with my body. So it's difficult to stay committed to going to the gym and hiking and doing all the things that I like to do self-care-wise if I was also drinking. So in strengthening these good habits around the body, it kind of squeezes out the pockets or the availability or the desire often of drinking. And the last tool I want to suggest for now is reframing alcohol. Sometimes when you're wanting to quit a so-called bad habit, it's easy to demonize the thing, whether it be alcohol, cigarettes, social media, whatever it is. I think it's important to reframe it as no longer bad or good. Alcohol just does what it does. And in doing that, I believe you're taking back responsibility and power from being in maybe a state of victimhood where there's a sense of powerlessness. And for some people that may be totally true, depending on your level of dependency. For most people, though, I think you can take back some of your power and responsibility in your relationship with alcohol by just not demonizing it anymore and just seeing it for what it is and not giving it any more power beyond that. So for most people, you can take these tools and step into a new space. And the space that you'll probably occupy is one where you're taking 2 steps forward and 1 step back for a period of time. For me, that was years. I cannot tell you how many times I told my friends and community that I was done drinking, only to go back to it weeks later or a month or two later. And eventually I learned not to judge my progress on whether I was drinking or not, but rather, what are all the other things I'm doing with my time when I'm not drinking? That is the more important barometer initially. Use that as your focal point of, am I making progress? In other words, am I strengthening the muscles around this bad habit, so to speak, such that over time, your environment and your habits are going to be significantly stronger than when you, say, initially watched this video. Because with the strengthening of those muscles over time, there's going to be a lot more space in between drinking to eventually it may no longer be needed. Or your circumstances, like me, match up with grace and it's time to open a new chapter. So on the other side of alcohol, I want to share some of the benefits that I've experienced for the last several years. First of all, my decision-making has been significantly upgraded. So has my relationships. My bar is a lot higher now that I don't drink for relationships than when I did drink. And that's incredibly helpful. My boundaries are better, and so is my communication. I just don't put up with stuff that I used to when I was drinking. And that also mainly includes myself and some of the things I would put up for myself. So boundaries, definitely, and standards experience an upgrade. The other thing that happens is improved health. No more hangovers. That's a big deal, especially if you are struggling or waking up at least once a week with a hangover. That's an issue. Beyond the physical health, there's also just more alignment and flow in my day-to-day. Opportunities seem to happen more frequently now, and I'm able to recognize them and take meaningful action where before it seemed more muddied. Quitting alcohol is not just about sobriety, although that's absolutely an important first step. It's also about thriving. What do I want my life to look like, right? Over time, you're going to see that you're filling your space, this newfound spaciousness, with things that you enjoy and things that just feel more resonant. And beyond thriving, one takeaway for me that's always been clear these last several years is the importance of celebrating each and every victory. That will make this stick. Your ability to celebrate each win, no matter how big or small, makes a profound difference in your connection with a new chapter without alcohol and stepping into a life of freedom, power, and thriving. And so with that said, I just want to come back to a few basics, which is, first of all, knowing that you're not alone on this journey. And there's only one way to do it, in my opinion, and it's one day at a time. And so to the extent that you can have those long-term goals, stay connected to your why, and then just take it one day at a time, knowing you're not alone, you're on the path. And I hope that in the future I could put out more material to help you stay connected with this new chapter. Thanks so much for watching, and until next time.